Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder of Digital Leadership Associates. I'm also the author of the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Change Makers. With me today, I've got Nick Toman. I'm just going to invite him to broadcast and join. So if you've not read it, Nick is one of the authors of the Challenger Customer. It's a fantastic book. If you've not read it, then I really recommend that you read it. Nick is... I've invited Nick to join. Nick should be joining. And here he is. Hi, Nick. How you doing?
Hi, Tim. How are you? I'm
excellent. How's things with you?
Very good, sir. Very good. Excited to be here. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Nick. Well, thank you for joining us. And I was just telling everybody in the introduction that that you're the co-author of this fantastic book, the Challenger Customer. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So
where people can find you, where just your coordinates, I think you call it in the US.
Of course. I work for a company called CEB. We are a best practices and advisory firm with a global presence. I operate out of Washington, D.C., where our global headquarters are. As a company, we're kind of an interesting company in that we study all sorts of different functional disciplines across the entire corporate suite. So finance, IT, legal. I happen to head up our sales practice. So I study sales organizations and try to understand what drives sales and work very closely with our marketing counterparts. So sales and marketing excellence. And really the book itself is a product of, about 8 years of research that we put into understanding what the proper sales and marketing motions look like today, particularly given very, very changing customer dynamics. And so, absolutely would love to engage with anybody who has questions further beyond what we covered today. By all means, very open.
And where are you? So where can people find you on?
People can find me on Twitter at Nick_Toman. That's Toman. So Nick_Toman. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And if you ping me there, I'd be sure to get right back to you.
Okay. So have you seen any changes at all since you wrote that book? Has there been because you came out with some CEB came out with some research recently about how the buying process had changed. I'm just think in your work as running sales and that, have you seen anything change?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a bit of a kind of slow burn almost in terms of some of the changes we've seen with increasing numbers of stakeholders participating in decision making. It's really interesting because if you talk to almost anybody who makes a decision for a company, whether you're serving on a committee or you're buying CRM, it doesn't matter. It seems like the speed of decision making has ground to a halt. In part, that's because this number of stakeholders has increased. The second thing, though, Tim, that we've really been tracking, and I think perhaps more important and more critical to the challenges that we face in commercial roles selling, is the diversity of stakeholders. It's interesting in that every single company has this story that goes something like this. We used to sell to stakeholder A, B, and C. We still sell to A, B, and C, but now we sell to X, Y, and Z. And I think that diversity of stakeholder, right, where our solutions, they got bigger. They got more expensive. And so finance got involved. They had more business impact. So the various lines of business and end users got involved in the decision making. They incorporated technological elements. So the IT suite got involved. Legal suddenly found their way into these deals. And so just this explosion of diverse stakeholders is the thing that we've really been tracking. And I think rests at the center of so many commercial challenges today. It is truly hurting cats. And it makes things really, really hard, not just for sellers, but for customers too, who are trying to make a decision amidst all these, varying stakeholders.
So you're in your research, you came out and said that now there was about for every enterprise deal, there was about 6.8 people involved.
Yeah, in fact, it's changed since our original research.
Okay, so I mean, LinkedIn kind of say 4.7, and you're saying 6.8, But you actually added a dynamic to that as well, which is quite interesting, which is that if you're dealing with one person in an organization, you kind of got like an 80% chance of closing the deal. Whereas if you're actually dealing with 6.8, you're only, was it 30% likely to close the deal?
You're below 30% likely to close that deal.
And your new masters, Gartner, have a document that say that in most enterprise deals, 95% of them actually never come to a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you pour that all into the melting pot,
right.
There's no decision making going on.
And
so
that's
if I'm a sales leader and I've got a sales forecast, what am I supposed to do?
Indeed. And I think this is a challenge. By the way, that, just determining the number of deals that fade out, well before we ever know about them, either through marketing channels or through sales channels, that's a really hard number to ascertain. And I would certainly concur with what I love our new masters at Gartner, which CEB was just announced will be acquired by Gartner in the short future here. But
sorry, so
I think that number is even tough to size, and I would argue it might even be greater than that, because there is so many pieces of potential business where, if you look at it, on paper, so to speak, right? Certain conditions existing in the customer's organization, certain configurations, certain business problems, certain amount of budgeting, that, if we had a crystal ball and could look inside customers' businesses, it's like, God, this is perfect business, perfect fit. Yet nothing happens because one or two or three stakeholders bind down, get distracted by other initiatives, have a different agenda, and can't even convene a group to begin some process around decision making. So a lot of businesses withering on the vine, and I think it signals to us, why, and where a lot of our most recent work, Tim, subsequent to the book, is taking us, why we have to think differently about a lot of account intelligence and how we're working with customers, and quite frankly, how we're antagonizing and kind of stimulating customers to rally around new directions for the business. Because in many cases, they themselves are having a hard time even beginning that rallying process.
Yes. So I mean, you said that there was you've got some even later research around the 6.8. I mean, are you saying you're saying it's getting worse?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been tracking that number. In fact, we probably about twice a year, we issue very significant buyer studies to understand various dynamics within buying groups. We've done 4 studies the past 2 years, and in a statistically valid way, I've seen that trend continue rising upward, and it's really quite remarkable to see. In fact, our data first said about 4.7, then 5.4, which is the data point we published in the book. That went up to about 5.9. Now it's up to about 6.8. Very similar sample sets, and so this is a very rigid and firm finding that we're seeing out there. Now, you have to think at some point. I have to ask the question, Nick, is this sort of an infinite trend? I have to think at some point, there's just, you get stakeholder to death and people start to shoo others away from decision making. But at this point, we haven't yet fully seen that inflection point.
Because I think, in sales that I've been involved in, that you used to either sell to IT or you sold to the business.
That's right.
And people generally, and if you look at certain vendors, they tend to have their comfort zone about who they will sell to. Okay. And usually, it will be, I'm selling an ERP system, therefore the decision will be made by the finance department, or it will be made by IT. Whereas now you generally get both of them involved. And then you'll get.
And by the way, the points of origination, what's remarkable, you talk to enterprise salespeople, and the point of origination, there always used to be this old debate around, if it's originated within the business, it's better business typically than corporate center, who's just going to try to get by with the basics. What's interesting is you're getting both points of origination at once in enterprise sales, and they've already been convening. And so it's a really different sales dynamic, and it presents all sorts of interesting new challenges for us, because I got to bring together people who speak, one language with people who speak another language. They can't get on the same page, yet here I am trying to sell to them and get them to agree on something, anything, beyond let's move cautiously, let's spend as little as possible, let's avoid risk. That's the type of agreement that you get with very diverse stakeholders. It's lowest common denominator. I've got to find a way as a commercial person to break through and get these people to agree on something more.
So one of the things that I've seen, because I've been involved in cloud sales now for the last 4 years.
Sure.
And quite often what you find, I put out a blog yesterday about the death of the RFP, trying to stimulate some discussion about whether the RFP is dead or not, because I've actually seen it switch and change in the way that it's used. But what we were quite often finding is that you were talking to the business about cloud, and in effect it is as straightforward as going in and putting your credit card, not quite that straightforward, but sort of like that. But immediately they'd get IT involved, and the IT that would then start saying, well, does it run on HP servers? And it's like, no, it's in the cloud. It doesn't matter what servers, we're going to provide you with a service and the service level. And then you'd actually get bogged down in, well, does it meet this particular particular standard? It's like, well, your systems were hacked, ours haven't.
Right.
So tell me which one is the most insecure.
That's right.
And so, you would actually get bogged down in conversation, but you can understand that the people, it's a turkeys voting for Christmas situation. When you've got big IT departments of 1,000 people, why would they all want to suddenly go to the cloud?
No, precisely.
They're going to go, we're going to stop this.
And here's what's really interesting, Tim, is just to extrapolate a bit to some of the broader trends we see. And that is a great example of this dynamic, which is you've got different sets of stakeholders who have done their own learning, have their own assumptions, have their own beliefs about how the business.
So when you say they've done their own learning, they've gone online and done that.
They've gone online, they've networked, they've talked to other people who've bought the solution, they've talked to other vendors, they've done some degree of work, right? And we have that one data point that a lot of your followers have probably come across somewhere in nature, the whole 57% data point, which says, the average B2B buyer, 57% of the way through the purchase before they engage a supplier. You can quabble about what percentage really at. The point is, they have done some degree of research. They are arriving with a set of what they believe to be the right understanding around the solution set, what's right for the business. By the way, what's interesting is nowhere in that 57% do we know that they themselves got it right. And the chances are very good that their counterparts inside their organization, the other stakeholders, have arrived at different truths.
Yes.
That they've come to. And so you get this entrenchment of view, this belief, and I understand what we need to do for our business. So you've got your central IT folks who are saying, these are the priorities, these are the requirements, these are specifications. The business saying, no, they're totally different. And here we are trying to serve up something that makes sense to both. And what's interesting, and this goes back to a lot of the work we've done in the challenger customer and the challenger sale, which is sometimes I just need to pull out the TNT, set it in the middle of this group, and explode the thing, and help them reset their expectations so they can convene around a common view for their business, a common understanding of the problem, which typically they don't have a common view of the problem, a common view of what they should do, and finally, who they should work with, namely me as a supplier. But if they don't believe that, if they don't see alignment around that problem and what they should do as a business, the chances of my solution being the right fit is really, really nominal.
Right. So I have a lot of followers on here who are people who are social sellers, sales leaders and salespeople. So they're sitting the other side of the table. So how should they be responding to this? If the fact that they've got a whole set of opportunities in front of them, and the fact that 95% of them aren't going to make a decision, what do they do?
What does one do? Now, I think the first thing, particularly for those social selling, you've got a leg up. You are in the learning chain, okay? If you are merely social blasting, you are not in the learning chain, but being involved in that dialogue, understanding who's part of the dialogue, understanding the players, building that network, building visibility around, who are the folks that are learning, and interjecting yourself into the learning process. Obviously, step one. I think that is.
So let me just break that down. So when you say social blasting, you mean just firing out stuff? I'm on social. There, I'm just going to stuff a load of stuff into buffer and fire it out. That isn't social.
Right. Precisely not.
But if we think about. So if we think about it from an account-based marketing perspective, and I'll translate that into my everyday salesperson, which is I'm actually going to find all those seven people that are actually going to make a decision, and I'm going to find them, and I'm going to use social to do that, and I'm going to connect with them, and I'm going to engage with them.
Yeah, that's like pushing a rope uphill, isn't it?
It is, but that's what you're talking about in terms of finding out who those people are and finding what they're interested in, and rather than selling to, someone joked with me today that I always say we used to sell to Fred in IT, but now rather than dealing with Fred in IT, we're now dealing with Janice, and we're now dealing with Desmond, and we're now dealing with a whole bunch of people across a whole diversity of people across different departments.
Yep. Absolutely.
And we need to find them and engage with them.
Well, we need to find them and engage them, but here's what's interesting, and we've done considerable research around how do I deal with this consensus dynamic, right? Diverse stakeholders across the business, roles I traditionally haven't had to engage. I'll bring this back to social selling in a moment, because I know you've got a lot of eager social selling salespeople and management teams out there. But let's just talk about for a moment what we found within the research, because what it tells us is that simply accessing all those different individuals, right? I got to first track them all down, right? The classic sales approach is got to track them down. Once I've tracked them all down, then I got to win them all over. And what our research shows us very definitively is that the gains from simply tracking everybody down are quite nominal. Now, what I do once I track them down becomes really important. Here's what most salespeople do, is I track them down and I win each person over on the merits of what that particular offering means to them. So if I'm selling, let's just say marketing automation, I've got to deal with someone in IT, perhaps an IT analyst, perhaps someone in information security, perhaps somebody, even the CIO, right, for a small company. I've got to explain to them how my marketing automation solution is seamless integration with their legacy systems and their current systems of record, right? I'm not going to talk about micro segmentation strategies and the ability to do all kinds of marketing analytics. I'm going to talk about integration and the seamless nature of the integration, minimal business disruption, get them hooked on my solution. Next thing I have to be finance, right? Talk about how they can creatively finance this purchase or creatively come up with a compelling business case.
Lead this, or it's going to be cheaper than one they've got at the moment. Or something.
So it's purely a financial conversation. Finally, get to my bread and butter conversation, the marketer, and I talk to them about the core capabilities of my solution, how it's differentiated. And so I've closed each one of these three stakeholders, right? And you would assume 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. And what we increasingly find is that 1 + 1 + 1 = 0. I've got all three of them have committed yes. But for whatever reason, they don't get on the same page. And when you dig deeper into the research, what you find very clear, and this just begins to make sense logically, right, is that because I have essentially captured their own value drivers, I'm inherently beginning to drive them apart versus drive them together on a common understanding of the problem, what's right. The business, and why my solution's best. And so inherently what happens is we begin to push people apart with that whole foxhole by foxhole by foxhole type of warfare to sell the deal. So what we have to do is find a way to bring these individuals together. And what the research, again, this is where having so much research helps us. What the research shows us very clearly, it's not about trying to bring them together in social selling forums. It's not about trying to bring them together even in a single meeting, right? It's finding the individual within their organization who's best at driving change and bringing those individuals together. And this is where the story takes a really interesting turn, Tim, is that individual is typically not the person we've taught our commercial teams to go engage, right? The classic advocate who wants you to win the business, has skin in the game, is all pro your solution, drooling and salivating to get your solution installed. Not the right person.
So in the past, this is really interesting. This in the past, I've been trained on Miller Hyman and Holden and you get these internet. And you got to find the fox, or you got to try the internal salesman, or the coach, or the angel. Some people call it. Yeah. And what they are is somebody that's going to, you go to them and go, come on, how are we going to win this?
Right.
And they go, well, what you need to do,
right?
Yeah, what you need to do is do this, and I'll take you to see this person, and if you do this presentation, that you'll win it. And what you're saying, you now need more than that.
Yeah, and this is really nuanced. Really nuanced, but really important. The classic advocate, coach, fox, a lot of these methods, and this isn't to say that they're wrong by any means. I think those roles, those types of stakeholders are hugely valuable, particularly to get information and an understanding and introductions to individuals within that buying group. But what we found very clearly is the individuals who are pro-supplier, the individuals who are highly accessible, the individuals who are happy to navigate you through the organization, dish the dirt, tell you what's going on, tend to be the individuals with a little bit less credibility. Okay, not to say they're uncredible, but they have less credibility. They aren't the ones who are really going to drive the change for the customer's business.
So these people won't necessarily have authority.
It's not necessarily about authority.
Is it that they have influence, but they don't have authority? It's
not necessarily a story of following authority and lines of decision making. Okay, oftentimes these are middle-level folks in the business. It could even be end users. But they're the individuals who actually drive change for the business. Here's the thing that was interesting in all of our research when we looked at these stakeholders. These individuals could care less about you as a supplier. They could care absolutely less about you as a supplier. What they care about is doing the right thing for their business and ideas that help their business progress. And if you as a supplier can leave aside your personal product agenda and help them drive their business idea forward, right? Let's think about that framework I laid out a minute ago, Tim. Problem, my action, then the supplier. If I can help find the person, and help them determine and get a crystal clear understanding of the problem and what they have to do about it, and then arm them to take action, guess what? The business naturally begins to follow. And that's the point of engaging what we call it, we call it the mobilizer, but it's kind of
in your book you call it the mobilizer.
Mobilizer. The point is, though, these individuals, they could care less about your agenda, they could care less about your products. You sit down and have a conversation with this person, or I call on this person. It is not a pretty sales call, right? If I send a average performing sales rep, very competent and capable of talking about their products, and to meet with this person, they're going to get blasted out of the office. The call is not going to be very long. Now, if I come in with an idea about their business and how to transform their business, or how to improve, or even just simply evolve the business marginally, they're going to ask questions. They're tough questions. They're going to push back. They're going to be skeptical. You leave that sales call and you feel almost, drained. It's a tough call, Tim. And these are the calls where, you go back to your sales manager, you take your nice pretty pitch deck and you say, this new pitch deck stunk. They hated it. They didn't like the ideas for their business. They pushed back and everything. In reality, they were pushing back because they were exploring, is this good for my business? Am I going to put my neck out there and rally the troops around this idea? Am I going to spend personal and political capital inside my organization? And that's the difference. They don't care about you. They care about their business. And if you aren't speaking that language, you're never going to get past go, right? So
there's the difference between, the internal salesperson was always about their personal win. I remember in a course in Miller Hyman, which was, tell me, so Nick, what are you going to get out of this sale? Whereas what you're saying with the mobilizer is that maybe there's some personal thing, but it's also something about the business that they feel that they need to get.
Make no mistake, Tim, it's B2B buying and B2B selling, as rational and business case oriented as we want to make it, is very emotional. The thing I would urge caution, particularly to folks listening, in one of the stakeholder profiles we found was very telling. We called them the climber. And the climber is very synonymous, and I won't name the methods, but you'll know the methods, those who practice the methods, but it's all about the person has the kind of with them. What's in it for me? They're the person who's got a personal agenda. Typically, these individuals are looking for promotion or to grow their empire, fiefdom within their company through the course of buying a significant thing, right? A major capital purchase or changing some systems and processes, so they're going to bring in vendors to help with that. The challenge and what we find, the efficacy of this individual in terms of driving change is very, very, very small. In many cases, it's a negative because their credibility is completely lacking. Everybody's
hence the climber. They're trying to climb up the greasy pole.
You're in it for yourself, and we all work with climbers. We all know climbers. It's really fascinating. In the book, we have 7 different profiles we found based on a very rigorous factor analysis, where we look for common attributes and how people behave. That the 3 main characters, we kind of extrapolate 7 up to 3 main characters, and just to make it easier and more, something you can walk around with and think about. But we have mobilizers, who are the ones who are looking for those ideas, right, and drive the change in their business. Very vendor neutral, could care less about you or your products, to be honest. Secondly, we have the talkers, and this is much more classic kind of advocates or champions. These are the individuals who are willing to take a sales call, pro vendor, meet with you at a moment's notice, network you through the organization, dish the dirt. They have self-motivation, but often they're lacking credibility, and we see that very clearly in their data. Their efficacy in terms of bringing people together and driving change is very small. And then the last group, we have what we call the blockers. Very self-evident who those individuals are. And the blockers, what's interesting is the blockers aren't so much against you as they're often just pro status quo. And these are the ones you're going to hear, we're just in execution mode right now. Can you come back in 6 months? That's a classic blocker objection. And so how we treat those and engage with those individuals, all of them have value and merit. Make no mistake, but the thing you have to be careful of is the talker. And it's interesting, Tim, we've kind of gone through and done, loss analysis or stalled deal analysis with our clients. And there was one deal I remember where the business had been forecasted for 20 straight weeks. This was a major payroll company, and they were talking with, on paper, the right customer, right? The senior point of contact, was really interesting. We showed them the research and they said, wait a minute, we've got a senior talker. What our data tells us, about 33%, about a third of all senior decision makers are talkers. So that's why I say be careful following the org chart, because there's people who are very willing to learn and want to keep understanding and just get a sense of what's going on, and they're going to do a damn thing at the end of the day.
So as a sales leader, what do I need to be looking at my forecast and saying, okay, do I need to be looking for these individuals? Do I need to be making sure that when I do my analysis, I've got a mobilizer? And do I need to be pushing against and saying, if you say that 33% of decision makers are talkers, I've got to be very wary of that.
Yep. Well, and what I will, there's two questions I always leave sales teams with when I talk about mobilizers, and the book will help you understand how to do this. But very specifically, one, are you working with a mobilizer? Who is it? Tell me, right? And if you're a sales manager and you're listening, this is something to begin, working with your teams on, whether it's an account review or an opportunity review or just a general pull-up on a piece of business. But who's your mobilizer? And how do you?
Right.
And I think that what's really interesting is we talk about, I like to play a lot of poker. We talk about tells, right? There's certain tells when you play poker. I can read kind of what the other people I'm playing with, what their quirks and cues and, postures, and they tell me things about them. Well, there's similarly tells about a mobilizer. And we've captured that in the book. But, just to give folks a very brief sense of what that is, you're really looking for individuals who are skeptical. They push back. They want to debate. They want to explore. Those are all good signs. They're not bad signs.
Right. Yeah.
They talk about their company, not themselves. Yep. And they can actually drive action. They can get meetings to happen. They can get companies to give you data, right? They can get the company to take a diagnostic on your firm's behalf. They will act on homework assignments if you give them homework assignments.
Okay. And is because there's a recommendation that you give people homework on the basis if they go and do it, then that's a good sign. If they don't, then you're kind of giving them a test.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting, Tim. As part of the research, the data tells you so much. We did interviews in fact, we went out to our membership, which is at CEB. We work with 850 sales organizations globally. I went out and we hand tapped about 50 sales organizations, said, give us your top producer, your very top producer. And we did interviews with them. And it's so telling because the number one thing, Tim, we put this research in front of them and just kind of got to help us understand what's it exactly telling us. But the number one thing they told us time and time again about the mobilizer is you must give them homework.
Right.
In cases, it may even feel arbitrary, but if you can't do the homework, then I've got to leave you aside. You're a talker. And I've got to decommit from you and find someone else. Now, I might use that talker to find my mobilizer.
Yeah.
But I've got to find that mobilizer.
Okay. And also, are we seeing the end of the generalist salesperson? Or because if you've got to have this person to go in and basically talk, otherwise you're going to have masses of pre-sales people, the pre-sales person that can talk.
Have we got another hour? No, I think you could draw that conclusion to a degree. I don't think we are necessarily there yet. And the reason I say that is we have entered an era definitively of team-based selling, right? Particularly as you move towards the enterprise sale. And I get it. There's a lot of folks who are selling into smaller and more medium-sized businesses who aren't quite there yet. The point is, we now have teams making buying decisions, and increasingly we have teams making, right, those sales efforts. So it's team versus team, and that is changing the dynamics considerably. In fact, one of the things I'm studying right now is what's a good team look like? What's a good functional sales team look like? But the reason I mention that is I have to have a certain amount of expertise if I'm going to help the customer change their business and understand fundamentally what they have to do differently. If I'm a sales generalist and I don't have that knowledge, I certainly can have a specialist overlay that's helping me with that. The point is, I'm able to sustain that conversation and help them think differently about their business. Ultimately, then thinking differently about my products. And that is a very, very important point. First, I have to help them think differently about their business. And it doesn't matter, I'm kind of indifferent whether that's the sales rep themselves or it's an overlay, or I bring in a senior vice president. I kind of don't care. The point is I need to engage them in that dialogue and how I can best organize that dialogue. I mean, there's a million considerations that go into specialist versus generalist, and what's the seller bag look like, and what's the coverage look like, and territory look like, and et cetera, and so on. But the bigger point, Tim, is we have to be able to engage the customer in a conversation that helps them think differently about their business.
Right. Yeah.
That's the point.
Okay, brilliant. Nick, this has been fantastic. Thanks. Been great talking to you. Remind people again where they can find you in terms of your.
Yeah, so a couple places that you can find us. The books that you can easily go out and find on Amazon or wherever. The Challenger Sale and then the Challenger Customer. Thanks for that, Tim. And then find our website at cebglobal.com. So again, cebglobal.com. And there's a wealth of information there available to you. And you can personally find me on Twitter at Nick_Toman, Toman, is my handle for Twitter. So feel free to reach out, ping me, and would love to hear from you.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Excellent.
And good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.